Farrah Fawcett and Lee Majors were seen as Hollywood royalty. Yet beyond the bright lights and public smiles, something far more intense and heartbreaking was happening behind closed doors. Lee Majors remained almost completely silent about their painful separation for decades until now. After so many years of silence, he finally opens up about the love he lost, and what truly went through his heart after Farrah left. Join us as we walk through the unspoken story and discover the emotional truth Lee Majors has now shared under the public spotlight. Before becoming one of Hollywood's most glamorous couples, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were simply two individuals chasing ambitious dreams in a fast-paced world. They came from very different beginnings, yet somehow, those differences brought them together in a way that felt both destined and unexpected. Lee Majors, originally named Harvey Lee Urey, was born on April 23, 1939, in Wyandotte, Michigan. His early life was filled with hardship. He lost both of his parents before turning to. Afterward, relatives raised him in Middlesbrough, Kentucky. In this small southern town, Lee learned to be strong and silent. He rarely shared emotions and kept most things inside, a trait that would follow him for life. That as a teenager, Lee focused more on sports than performing. He excelled in football and received a scholarship to Indiana University. Later, he transferred to Eastern Kentucky University and kept playing until a serious back injury ended his football dreams. That was the moment he started considering acting as a real path. In the early 1960s, Lee moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. With his sharp features, tall figure, and quiet intensity, he seemed perfect for the screen. Casting agents quickly took notice. After small parts here and there, his breakthrough came in 1965, when he was cast as Heath Barkley in the Western TV series The Big Valley. Working alongside icons like Barbara Stanwyck, Lee earned respect and audience admiration. He was solid, professional, and never flashy. He didn't seek the spotlight, yet people couldn't look away from him. By the late 1960s, Lee Majors was regarded as a dependable rising star. Producers trusted him. His calm strength made him perfect for steady, silent roles. Even off-screen, he kept things low-key. He didn't party constantly or chase headlines. He came off as focused, loyal, and grounded, the kind of man who might balance someone else's chaotic world. Farrah Fawcett was born on February 2, 1947, in Corpus Christi, Texas. She grew up in a tight-knit family and was quickly recognized for her natural beauty. But Farrah had more than looks. She was friendly, funny, and had a magnetic personality. She became a popular cheerleader in high school and won many beauty contests in her teens. Her smile, bright eyes, and golden hair made her unforgettable. After high school, Farrah joined the University of Texas. While studying, she was named one of the 10 most beautiful college students in the nation. That recognition caught the attention of Hollywood talent agents. Though unsure at first, Farrah eventually moved to Los Angeles to try modeling. Once in LA, it didn't take long for her to be noticed. Photographers adored working with her. Her photos showed not just beauty, but an approachable warmth. She had a rare ability to appear glamorous and friendly at the same time. Soon she was in commercials, magazine spreads, and minor television roles. Even before fame hit, it was clear to many, Farrah was headed for something bigger. It was in the late 1960s that Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett first met at a party in Los Angeles. According to those who were there, something instantly clicked. At the time, Lee was already a well-known actor, while Farrah was just starting out. But their connection went beyond status or fame. They began dating soon after meeting. As star rose, Lee stood by her, quietly supportive. What they shared looked and felt like love, and for a while, it truly was. But as both of their careers gained momentum and media attention intensified, maintaining that love became much more difficult than either had imagined. Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett tied the knot in 1973, officially becoming Hollywood's golden couple. The world admired their glamorous pairing, him, the tough, brooding action star, her, the bright, beautiful rising icon. But beneath the public admiration, their marriage was entering dangerous territory. By the mid-1970s, both their careers were accelerating. Lee had found enormous success in The $6 Million Man, a science fiction action series where he played Colonel Steve Austin, a former astronaut rebuilt with bionic implants. The role made him an international sensation and kept him constantly busy. Long shooting hours, media tours, and fan attention left little time for anything else, including his marriage. At the same time, Farrah's face was appearing everywhere. Her feathered hairstyle and glowing smile had become symbols of beauty and youth. She landed the breakout role in Charlie's Angels in 1976, portraying Jill Monroe. The show became an instant hit, and overnight, Farrah became one of the most recognizable women in the world. Her posters sold in the millions. Everyone wanted to look like her, be her, or date someone like her. But as her fame exploded, so did the strain on their marriage. Suddenly, both were working non-stop, and their schedules rarely aligned. Lee was filming one show, Farrah was promoting another, and they were often in different cities, or even different countries. The physical distance between them became emotional distance. Phone calls replaced dinner conversations, and loneliness filled the silence they once shared with laughter. Lee, who had always been more private and guarded, struggled with his wife becoming a global sex symbol. Tabloids constantly splashed her image across covers. He reportedly found it hard to see her poster, the one with the red swimsuit, on every teenage boy's wall and magazine rack across America. Though proud of her success, he felt like she was slipping away from the person he once knew, the down-to-earth woman he met at a small party, not the icon now idolized by millions. There were rumors. Of course, Hollywood never let silence stay silent. Some whispered about affairs, others about jealousy or emotional neglect. The truth was less dramatic, but far more painful. They had simply grown apart, not because of betrayal or scandal, but because their worlds no longer overlapped. They tried to fix it. Lee asked Farrah to slow down. He even suggested she step back from acting to save their marriage. But Farrah, at the peak of her fame, wasn't ready to give it all up. She had worked hard for this moment. After years of being labeled just another pretty face, she was finally proving she could lead, act, and carry a show on her own. Slowing down meant risking everything she had fought for. The love hadn't vanished, but the connection was now lost. In phone messages, press junkets, and hotel rooms on opposite coasts. The harder they tried to hold on, the more it slipped through their fingers. In 1979, they separated. The world was shocked, but those closest to them weren't. The fairy tale romance had ended, not with anger, but with sadness and quiet disappointment. Farrah moved on quickly. Soon after the separation, she began a relationship with actor Ryan O'Neal, which only deepened the wound for Lee. He remained quiet, rarely discussing the divorce in public. Even when asked, he offered few words. But those who knew him said the breakup devastated him more than he let on. Years passed, and both Lee and Farrah continued with their careers. They took different paths professionally and personally, but even as time marched forward, the echo of what they once had never truly faded. Though the public saw Farrah Fawcett's relationship with Ryan O'Neal as passionate and dramatic, for Lee Majors it marked a painful turning point. The man who had once stood by Farrah through her rise now watched from afar as her life moved in a new direction without him. But what hurt the most wasn't just that she had moved on. It was how suddenly and publicly it happened. Ryan O'Neal wasn't a stranger. He was someone Lee knew well, even considered a friend at one point. They had both risen in Hollywood around the same time, shared industry circles, and crossed paths often. That made it all feel like more than just betrayal. It felt personal. When photos of Farrah and Ryan holding hands and appearing together at red carpets began to flood the magazines, Lee had no warning. There were no phone calls or heartfelt explanations. He, like the rest of the world, learned of the new romance through the media. Even worse, Lee and Farrah were still legally married at the time. Their divorce wouldn't be finalized until 1982. So as Farrah and Ryan's relationship blossomed in front of millions, Lee remained her husband on paper, if not in heart. People close to Lee say he was blindsided. Though he'd sensed their marriage was falling apart, he had believed there was still a chance to repair what was broken. He had stayed loyal. He had made efforts. And now, those hopes were crushed by headlines and red carpet photographs. The betrayal stung deeply. Rumors soon followed. Whispers that Farrah's involvement with Ryan had started before the marriage truly ended. While nothing was ever confirmed, many believed the timeline overlapped. But for Lee, it didn't matter. What mattered was that the woman he had loved so fully was gone, and she hadn't even said goodbye. Yet even then, Lee refused to speak publicly. He didn't hold press conferences, give tell-all interviews, or throw blame. Instead, he disappeared from the spotlight. He stopped going to high-profile events and turned down media requests. He wouldn't respond to gossip columns or correct false narratives. He simply went quiet. That silence spoke louder than any interview could. It was his shield, his way of coping. He chose to remove himself from the story rather than become a headline in it. As Farrah leaned into her fame, Lee retreated. The man once admired for his calm strength became even more reserved. His world grew smaller. He avoided places he might see her, skipped events where she might be mentioned, and refused to let his emotions become a spectacle. And yet, even from a distance, Farrah remained a presence in his life. Her image was inescapable on screens, in magazines, on billboards. But for Lee, those were not just reminders of a former love. They were reminders of a wound that hadn't healed. Friends described Lee during this time as polite but guarded. He dated but never seemed to let anyone get too close. It was as if the part of him that once believed in lasting love had quietly shut down. Farrah, on the other hand, embraced the attention. Her relationship with Ryan O'Neal became a favorite subject for tabloids. They were often seen together, sometimes arguing, other times reconciled. Their story played out in public, intense, passionate, and endlessly complicated. Still, Farrah remained in the spotlight, never shying away from cameras or headlines. Lee's absence, in contrast, became almost symbolic. He wasn't just avoiding Farrah. He was choosing silence over spectacle, privacy over pain. Some thought he was cold. Others understood it differently. He wasn't heartless. He was protecting the only thing he had left of their love, the memories. Years passed, and both moved further apart. But their story wasn't entirely over. In the early 2000s, a mutual friend approached both Lee and Farrah with a simple idea, a private meeting. No press, no expectations, just a quiet conversation between two people who had once shared something rare. Farrah reportedly said yes. Enough time had passed, and she was open to reconnecting, even if just for peace and closure. She still held affection for the man she had once loved. Lee, however, was more cautious. He listened. He thought. He even admitted to close friends that the idea stirred something inside him, a memory of who Farrah used to be. Before the fame, before the distance, before it all fell apart. But in the end, he declined, not with anger, but with finality. Too much had happened. Too many years had gone by. Reopening that chapter felt too heavy, and once again, Lee's silence became his answer. Farrah Fawcett's final years were marked by courage, public vulnerability, and an unexpected return to the spotlight, not for her beauty or fame, but for her strength in the face of unimaginable pain. Diagnosed with a rare form of cancer in 2006, Farrah didn't fade into the background. Instead, she chose to document her battle. She allowed the world to see her struggle, not for sympathy, but to inspire and raise awareness. Her documentary, Farrah's Story, aired in 2009 and showed her most vulnerable moments. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't polished. It was real, raw footage of a woman who once symbolized perfection, now fighting for her life. The public watched as Farrah lost her hair, her strength, and at times, her ability to speak. But what she never lost was her dignity. She had become a symbol once again, not of beauty, but of bravery. During this time, Ryan O'Neal was by her side, often appearing in interviews and speaking about her condition. Their relationship, once rocky and tabloid fodder, had found a strange peace. Ryan claimed they had reunited, that they were planning to remarry, and that their love had endured. Whether or not those plans were real or simply hopeful dreams remains unclear. But what was certain was that Farrah didn't die alone. While much of the media focused on Ryan and Farrah's reunion, one person remained noticeably silently: Majors. For decades, he had avoided speaking publicly about Farrah. He had remained quiet through her rise, their breakup, her new relationship, and now, her illness. People wondered, would he say something? Would he visit? Would he at least send a message? Those closest to Lee said he was deeply affected. Though the years had passed, and both had moved on, Farrah still held a place in his heart. He followed her illness through the news, watched parts of her documentary, and quietly asked friends for updates. But true to form, Lee kept his feelings private. There were whispers that he had written a letter, a simple message, no press release, no drama, just words from a man who once loved her deeply. Whether Farrah received that letter before her passing is unknown. Some say it was delivered. Others say it remained sealed in a drawer. But even without confirmation, the idea that Lee had reached out, in his own quiet way, seemed to align with the man he had always been: reserved, thoughtful, and protective of the past. Farrah Fawcett passed away on June 25, 2009. Her death was overshadowed by another celebrity death that same day, Michael Jackson. Still, those who loved her mourned deeply. Tributes poured in from co-stars, friends, and fans around the world. She was remembered not just for her poster or her red swimsuit, but for her spirit in fight. Lee Majors did not attend the public memorial. He wasn't seen on red carpets or in televised tributes, but he did speak briefly and quietly. In a private statement shared through his representatives, he expressed deep sadness. He called Farrah an extraordinary woman and said he would always cherish the memories they had made together. It was short, simple, and deeply heartfelt. Years later, when asked in rare interviews about Farrah, Lee would pause. He didn't offer rehearsed answers or dramatic revelations. Instead, he reflected softly. "We were young," he once said. "We didn't know how to hold on to each other. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't regret. It was just honest." Today, their story is remembered as one of Hollywood's most beautiful and tragic romances. Two stars who found love at the height of their fame, only to be pulled apart by the very spotlight that made them icons. They were never reunited. There was no final embrace or grand reconciliation. But in Lee's silence and in strength, there remained a connection, a quiet thread that time could not erase. And perhaps that was enough.